Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to another Shopper Intelligence live webinar, and a very special one today because we have partnered with our friends at the AFGC to bring you not just one, in fact, but three essential webinars over the next 8 weeks. I hope you're well, folks. How are you doing? Are you in freedom? Are you still in lockdown? Maybe let us know in the chat, get yourselves involved from the get-go. And also let me know where you are. Whereabouts are you in the country? Perhaps you are not even in Australia. I've got a feeling we've got a few people joining us from New Zealand today. So welcome to you. First one in, Rodanthi, hello. Welcome to you from Melbourne. And there we go, Neil's in Auckland, so I was right. So welcome to everyone, whether you are in Australia or further afield. Now then, disruption, evolution, change, possibly three of the most overused words in the English language right now. Certainly, I feel words that you will be hearing a lot from a business context right now. And perhaps you're thinking, yeah, but they're pretty much a given. We know that's going on, right? So today, what we are focusing on is why. Why do you need to change? And most importantly of all, what do you need to do about it? Okay, if change is something that needs to happen in your organization, then what is the compelling reason for that change? And if evolution is, particularly in regard to shoppers, is something that's needed, then what do you do differently? Those are the things that we're going to tackle, not just today, but actually in the next couple of sessions during October and into November as well. And our promise to you, as always, all of our webinars, is that you will leave with something real, something tangible, something practical that you can go away with and take back to your business to look at with your team. Now, I said that perhaps you're thinking about this topic, this idea of change as being something of a given. But again, I'd just like to make this session really interactive and get you involved. We've obviously been through something momentous, something mammoth over the last 18 months. Do you feel, though, as though we've peaked? Have we seen the peak of the change that we're going to? Do you now feel that we're going to see a period of stabilization? Or do you feel that there's more to come? Go ahead and stick it in the chat. Either peaked, if you think that what we've seen has now plateaued in terms of the scale of the change that's gone on over the last 18 months, or if you think there's more to come, Fern, there we go. Susie, more to come. Okay, love to know what you think. Thanks for getting involved. Keep the comments, keep everything coming in, and we will make this as interactive a session as we can. Okay, now you can see it on screen already. In a moment, I'm going to go and introduce you to the speakers for today. But first, let's just touch on what the agenda and what the discussion will look like. First off, we will look at why the change needs to be now. Okay, pretty straightforward one, but why the change has to come now. Second theme for today, why you need to elevate the sustainability agenda. And then our third theme today, we'll round out exploring why innovation for you needs to be a must-have right now, not a nice-to-have in the Aussie market. As we go through, I'll introduce as many of your comments and questions as we can. We're not going to get a chance to get through everything, of course, but rest assured we will have a look at all the comments and everything that you've contributed after the session, and we'll follow up with you and explore those in more detail to the best of our ability. Hopefully, all things being well, we will wrap up in around about 45 minutes or so, and look out for some extra stuff. Look out for some extra value, some extra collateral that I'll release during the course of the session. Keep an eye, I think it's up on the top and right-hand side of your screen for the handouts that you can download as we go through the session. And also, bear this one in mind, a great opportunity for you at the end of this session to find out 3 big things that have changed in your category. Okay, great. Extra little bit of value that we want to offer for you from Shopper Intelligence to you. I'll talk more about that as we go through the session. So make sure you stick around. If you're happy with that, give us a thumbs up. Let us know if we are staying on track. Let us know if this session is delivering on those promises. Right. Lots of people actually scale change from Phil. Nick says more to come, but pace will be more normal. Like it. More to come. Peak of change. Still more to come. Okay, brilliant. Thank you for getting involved. now you guys know how the chat function works. Let's keep the comments coming and keep the conversation going. Okay, next then, I mentioned the fact that you won't have to put up with my voice for the next 40 minutes or so, and indeed, I'm in illustrious company today, and you have not one, but two industry experts joining today, both with a long track record of collaboration and, well, of commitment to a better, stronger, more efficient Australian food and grocery industry. First of all, it's wonderful to introduce Samantha Blake, Industry Affairs Director for Australian Food and Grocery Council. Hi, morning. I knew I was going to say morning at some point. How are you doing, Sam?
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, we've lost Sam. No, there she is.
Sorry.
She's gone into a whirly black space.
One of those
We'll have to come back to her in a moment.
No,
okay.
David.
Oh, hello.
Hi, David, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes. Was it just
Fantastic.
me? Hello, how are you doing?
Sorry, one of those vagaries of working in the way in which we're working is my entire system just dropped out for a moment or two. So I've missed the intro, but here I am. Firstly, can I please also extend my welcome to everyone who's joining us on today's webinar. It's great to have so many of you here. For those of you who don't know the Australian Food and Grocery Council, we're a member-based organisation representing food and grocery manufacturers and suppliers. Many of those on the call are members of ours. So a little bit about the peak industry. We have a very unique opportunity to work across the industry. We work both up and down the supply chain with suppliers, with government, with the bureaucracy and with key stakeholders. Our role is pretty simple. We help to shape industry policy. We advocate on the behalf of our members with government, retailers, stakeholders, and we work in the pre-competitive space to deliver collective action.
Oh, I don't know about anyone else, but I've lost Sam on audio.
Yeah, she's dropped out, I think.
Oh, she's gone again. Okay. She'll have another reboot and we'll come back to her again in a second. So for the time being, I'll say hello to Mr. Simon Ford, MD of Shopper Intelligence ANZ. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm very well. Hello, everybody.
Now, Simon never quite knows what sort of random question I'm going to throw at him at this stage. Could be something about Tottenham, could be something else that's going on in his life, but I'm not going to today. I'm just going to say, how are you doing? I've done that already, but also I know you're out talking to a lot of businesses at the moment, presenting our State of the Nation. I was going to ask you, what's the mood? What are you taking from those conversations that kind of reflects the sentiment in the industry?
Yeah, look, I think the mood is cautious optimism or positivity. I mean, clearly we are at a stage where we're right in the middle of it again, unfortunately. Some more than others. Obviously those in Melbourne and our friends in Auckland still in lockdown. We've had our Freedom Day this week in Sydney, but I think from a business perspective, you know, that optimism feeds through to business. I think the supply chain challenges and the cautiousness that we definitely have seen again in the last month or so is starting to subside, and there's a lot of planning about next year. And I think reflecting the chat, actually, lots of people saying, well, you know, we're in the storm, but and there's definitely more to come, but we're coming out of it.
Yeah, indeed. I think that's. It seems pretty much fairly split between the audience, between everyone we've got here saying there's more change to come. The pace may be a little bit slower than it has been, but the other 50% of us pretty much saying, look, there's more to come, and it's going to continue and maybe even accelerate. I saw a few accelerates coming through as well. Okay, and now we are at the cusp of launching the.
David, your sound's gone again.
Still can't hear you.
Apologies, folks. We're obviously having some tech problems at David's end. Are you okay, David, or do you just want to? Still can't hear you. If you can flick on, I can do the next section.
Simon, I'm back now and can hear and see you as well.
Well, why don't I say we lost you halfway through, Sam. So
okay.
You were talking about obviously your role and the business.
Yep.
How about you tell us about some of the big themes and trends you've been looking at and where the focus is for you at the moment?
Sure, absolutely. Look, I think it was interesting to see what was coming through the chat in terms of are things plateauing or are they going to continue to progress? And I think our view is in the lead up to Christmas and over the next few months, then we're likely to see some additional challenges coming our way. But before we go through some of those large industry challenges, I think it's just worthwhile reminding ourselves of the how vitally important our industry is to the well-being of every Australian. We have huge contribution to the economic growth of the nation, with a turnover of $132.7 billion directly by this FMCG sector. Employment sits around 270,000 people, and that's direct employment, so that doesn't include the upstream and downstream component of what we do. And 40% of that employment sits in the regions, which is incredibly important for our political masters. We're the largest manufacturing sector in Australia, with 32% of all manufacturing is FMCG. And our exports are $41 billion and growing, and a really important part of what we do. I don't think we should ever forget the fundamentals of what we do. We provide high quality, trusted food, beverage and grocery products. We take fresh produce from Australian farms and we turn that into the products that we consume and enjoy every day. And getting back to the first point, over the past 18 months, it'd be fair to say, both from a government and a community perspective, we have been recognised as being an essential industry and essential to the well-being of all Australians. It's the tremendous work that the people on this call and their businesses have done in terms of keeping supermarket shelves stocked, and that is incredibly important to the well-being of all of us. I think, David, if you can hear me, if you could flick to the next slide, that would be fantastic. Great, thank you. So while with that as context, it's really important for us to continue to thrive and grow. At the beginning of this year, early last year and into this year, the AFGC conducted an economic analysis of the sector. We did this through some robust economic analysis, and we have set the industry a really robust challenge. We're looking to double the size of the Australian FMCG sector to 2030, so over the next 10 years. So this is a really ambitious target for the industry. There's a couple of key elements to this that are worth just pointing out. Firstly, and one that we'll be talking about today, is around innovation. To get this growth trajectory, we really need to drive product innovation. And as you know, innovation and R&D are really the lifeblood of the FMCG sector. So as we go through today's presentation with Shopper Intelligence, it's going to be really interesting to unpack that innovation story. Secondly, we really need strong export growth across the entire sector. The current penetration of FMCG products into the export market is low. It's predominantly focused around primary produce going into export markets. So we really need to have that ambition of turning those primary produce into high quality ingredients, into finished products, and then exporting those. And then linked to this is the third component of stabilising inputs. We still want to be in a position to be able to purchase those international products we all love, whether it be brie or sauerkraut, whatever it is. But we need to do that within a balanced equation of domestic production. So while this is an ambitious scenario, it is plausible that we can create the right focus and settings to be able to drive the industry. We need to recognise through this, however, there are some challenges that we need to work towards to alleviate some of those pressures. So worth mentioning a few. Manufacturing costs are rising. They're rising more rapidly than output price. But think about commodities, global shipping, energy, labour, all those types of things. Our ability to be able to pass cost pressures through the supply chain is significant and impacted is significant. And if we don't have that ability due to the concentrated supermarket industry, it damages our profitability. If our profitability is damaged, then this results in investment stagnation. And our data indicates that this has absolutely been the case over the last 6 years, with both capital expenditure and R&D expenditure being impacted. Another challenge that we have is the current food regulatory system, which needs an overhaul to ensure that it doesn't curtail innovation and that costs aren't passed through to manufacturers and suppliers. And then the final one from my perspective is consumer expectations about health, wellness and sustainability have rapidly changed, and the industry must be in a position to respond, adapt and innovate to these. So whilst these are only a few of the challenges that we face, I think there are a few that are absolutely relevant to today's discussion. And I'm now going to hand us back to Simon to take us through some of those trends. So back to you, Simon.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, apologies everybody for the tech issues going on. David, are you with us or not with us? Doesn't look like he is. Okay. Well, yeah. Thanks, Sam, for highlighting where you sit on these things. Some important, a really good stretch target, I think, for us as an industry, something to all think about, and also some big themes there coming through from innovation and sustainability and so on.
Any joy now, guys? Can you hear me?
He's back. He's back from the dead. Hello, David. We can hear you.
We're okay. Yeah, we're having a gremlin day, and apologies to. Like, it seems a bit of a mixed bag out there as well. Some people are getting it, some people are not. Someone's just asked which browser to use. I'm in Chrome, but then that hasn't proved tremendously successful today. So look, apologies. It will be fine in the replay. So bear that in mind. But I know some of you are out there, so we're going to press on. And guys, well played. You fielded that little section very well. I think we're going to press on. Actually, to be honest, let's get into the first lesson, Simon. Yeah, should we do it before anything else? Before anything else goes wrong. Now, we hear a lot about all of the examples that you will know: the Kodaks, the Blackberries, the Nokias. It goes on and on. The people who didn't respond quick enough, the people who didn't react and evolve and change their way of thinking about the world. And I suppose, Simon, there does tend to be this risk that becomes white noise, that becomes a little bit of wallpaper. And I guess you're here to say, don't let that happen, right?
I am. I mean, white paper to some degree. And I think, I suppose human psychology, I think we don't think it's going to happen to us, would be my summary. So, we know the story of Kodaks and as you say, all those business examples where people didn't listen to advice or insights or shoppers or consumers. But the point there is it's happening now, and you need to take note. Now, I remember coming to Australia 15 years ago now, it was a while ago, and people telling me that the Audi model wouldn't work in Australia because things are different here. A couple of weeks ago, I had a discussion with a very large organisation in Australia that said, we love your data, we use your data, but budgets are a little bit tricky at the moment, so we're continuing working with 2019 insights. And that sort of discussion amazes me because the point is this: we are living through the biggest change in shopper expectations, shopper needs, the adoption of technology by shoppers that we've ever seen. A big step change on all of those things. And so what I wanted to do was start with an example in one category, just to say, look, change is happening and it's real and it's big and it's happening now. In fact, it's probably happening.
Oh no, now we've lost Simon. Dear, oh dear, it's just going from bad to worse for us today, isn't it? Well, look, I'm going to.
It is indeed, David.
I'm going to pick up where he is, and talk to this change. Now, it's fortunate because this is something that I've been presenting in our State of the Nation as well. But this is something really fascinating. Now, we called out this particular category because you can see on screen by just how much the proportion of male shoppers has increased in baby food through the period of COVID. So since before COVID to after, we now see a 31% increase in the proportion and the number of men shopping in that category. Now, this is very interesting for a number of different reasons, and you'll probably have your own perspective on what's going on here. First of all, We know that this is not unique to baby food. There are other categories where this has happened. Oh, hello.
Apologies, everybody. I don't know what's going on today.
We're having all kinds of issues. I was just making the point that this is not unique to baby food, Simon. We've seen it in a few other categories, such as bag salad and cake mixes, but there are some interesting and unique dynamics around the baby food example.
Yeah, thanks, David. So, I mean, look, the point here, change is massive in this category. In this instance, it happens to be demographics. In other categories, it's certainly around other needs and expectations. The point here is that men want very different things in baby food. So it's not just the fact that the shoppers are changing who they are, but their needs are different, and therefore what the packaging, the shelf, the store needs to communicate pre-store and in-store is different. And the point is, you don't see this at macro level. This is not a macro thing happening. Twice many men are not shopping in every category, and the needs haven't changed in every category. So you really need to understand what's happening at your category. And I promise you, there are changes and there are things happening in each category. Now, we cover over 170 categories. We haven't got time to do that now, especially with all these gremlins going on. And again, apologies for that. But what I want to do is just go right up to a macro level view of the market. So what we're going to look at here on this slide is what's important to people and how's that changed post-COVID. So the size of the bars represent what's important to people, and the green arrows, when they pop up, will be things that have changed. So what shoppers are saying to us is that, and apologies again if the slide is a bit slow on loading. Here we go. What shoppers are saying to us is that trusted quality is actually much more important to them. So pre-COVID, compared to where we are now, 2 years later, things like the importance of freshness, the importance of quality, the importance of Australian-made and authentic brands with a sourcing and production story that I can trust, safety, health, sustainability, all of these things significantly more important to the Australian shopper than they were 2 years ago. Now you'll see price still important, no change in terms of relativity to where it was 2 years ago. So this is quite a unique view. And if we go back to the last shock, which was the global financial crisis, for example, 10 years ago, when I had a look at that data, the big things that were changing there were all about price and value. So as a market, we went very much towards saving money and price focus. And price was the most important factor in Australian grocery. It's not anymore. Freshness and quality are more important than price. And so I think, don't feel that every shock is the same. This one's quite unique. And then on the next slide, what we're going to look at is how this compares to other countries, because again, it's not just unique to this shock, it's actually quite unique to our region. So just focus here on the vertical axis or the y-axis. And what this shows is how important, or the increase in quality importance over time. And what this tells us is that actually we are quite a unique market here, in that Australian shoppers are saying quality is more important to them and much more than any other market. So the importance of trusted quality, the safety, the health, the sourcing, everything else is relatively more important in our market, and in New Zealand as well, for those on the call from New Zealand. Now underneath that, you've got the Irish, still important in terms of the jump in quality. French and our American cousins saying, oh, it's about the same. And then the Brits down there actually saying quality is less important. So quite big differences in different markets in terms of the importance of, or the rising importance of trusted quality that we see in this market. Now, the other thing I've put on there, and again, just playing off this GFC comparison, is the importance of price. So in this market, price hasn't significantly moved, and that's the same for France, US as well. If we look at New Zealand, much more important for shoppers to land a price message now at a macro level. Remember, this is all macro level. It will change in category level. And the Brits again saying actually price is less important now. Certain things have gone up in the UK in terms of importance, particularly around things like sustainability and so on. But this just gives you a view of the uniqueness of this market. And the takeaway is, what does trusted quality mean for your category? Because there are many layers to that.
And Simon, just before we go on to the next aspects of this, because there's a few questions in here, so I was just going to touch on this and ask you this question as well. So first of all, it was worth pointing out, actually, someone said, well, the lockdown rules in certainly in Victoria have necessitated that one person per family goes out to store, so that may have skewed some of those findings. So I guess it feeds into this question a little bit as well, which is, to what extent do you see this as being short-term versus long-term changes? And a question to you out there as well, just to keep everyone engaged. Thank you for your comments. Do you guys think this is short-term change, or do you think this is long-term change for Australia? And that question to you, Simon, as well. What's your perspective?
Yeah, it really depends at category level and on the metrics you're using or you're looking at. So my view on baby is it's a short-term impact. It's true that, you know, we've been forced to send one person out to the shops for a while. However, let me reiterate, this was not something we saw on a macro view across all categories. You know, we could talk at length, I'm sure, about the reasons why the man might go shopping when there's a mother who's had a newborn baby and doesn't necessarily want to risk their health by going into stores. You know, it's unique to certain types of missions and certain categories. And I would suggest that's probably short term. On something like trusted quality, particularly some of the sustainability and innovation things we'll go and look at in a moment. My view, long term. It's here to stay. It's been increasing for the last, I don't know, 5-10 years.
Yeah.
Big step change through COVID. It's here to stay.
Sam, I can hear you there. You're concurring with that?
Yes, I am indeed. And I think that whole focus around sovereign capability is just one that's going to grow over the next coming years.
Yes. Okay. A couple of people saying short term. Yeah, I mean, it's there's lots of different aspects. I think, Simon, you've touched on what we see could be the short versus the long. But then I know you're going to go on and talk now about a slightly different aspect, which certainly, in my view, this is a long term one for sure.
Yeah, so, you know, it's one of the key components of trusted quality, if you like. It's been increasing in importance for a decade or so. And it's significant step change over the last 2 years in importance. Now, what this slide shows is satisfaction. So how happy are shoppers with how well it's been delivered? And, you know, you can see that by and large across the industry, we're doing a good job. So this is the products they buy, the categories they buy, and obviously from a retailer perspective, how well that retailer's doing. Just a side note, IGA really benefited from the COVID in the sense of meeting shoppers' needs and really pleasing them. So the kick up we see from the beginning of COVID there on IGA, you know, the gap was large. A lot of our measures, they're now closing or have closed that gap. And I guess the point here, if you're in supply land out there, then, you know, this is all about understanding where your category sits. I mean, here are the top 10 categories that are important from a healthy choice and range point of view. It's not just the fresh categories. There's, you know, breakfast categories, chilled snacking, and so on. What does healthy mean in your category? How well can your brand and your segments deliver to that? And how can you partner with the retailer to put a story together around that?
I think that's a really good point in terms of what does it mean your category, and this is something that I certainly see as I look across a lot. I can't get my words out now. I'm having a gremlin across a lot of different categories. It's the notion that health and the concept of health and well-being has evolved over the last 18 months, and so it isn't any longer just a question of ingredients or health claims, because we see interesting shifts at category level in things like environment and the importance of sustainability, in things like provenance, Sam, to your point about what we produce and make and supply that is from Australia. So this is certainly why I would suggest this is, in my opinion, this is all very much a long-term change and a significant shift in terms of what health really means to an Australian shopper. Right, so on we go. And there's also a lot of interesting ties here in with some other work that you've done, Sam, AFGC, in terms of the industry megatrends, right?
Yes, indeed, David. Look, what's most interesting to me on this is, well, firstly, let me just explain where this came from. This is some survey work that we did with our member companies, primarily at CEO and senior executive level, asking them from about 28 trends to identify their top mega trends. And just as Simon's been talking about, nutrition and health was the second largest megatrend identified by that group of people. And this is very much driven by the things that we've been talking about, very much driven by shopper demand, very much driven by category growth at supermarket retailers, both in private label and in branded product. And of course, the response then from us, the suppliers and manufacturers, diving into that mega trend. I think it's also interesting to note that this megatrend also sees pressure applied on the industry from health advocacy groups who really promote and demand high degrees of healthy foods. And just putting sustainability aside for one moment, David, in this area.
Mm-hmm.
The other one I think is worthwhile mentioning in nutrition and health is the government's focus on driving the health outcomes for the Australian population, and specifically targeting our sector to help them do that. So there's a number of levers that government is pulling to really push this health concept, such as things like Health Star ratings or the Healthy Food Partnership, which have gathered speed over time. So it's definitely a mega trend. I don't think it's going away at all, to your point earlier. I think it's going to drive in importance and significance.
Yeah.
And we certainly see that through research that organisations such as the CSIRO have undertaken, where they've looked at the demand for products in this sector, and they really see there being a growth, single digits still, but definitely a growth in the requirements for healthy products. So I think what we're talking about today is really important in this space. The other point I'd make on this one is, whilst this is a trend here domestically in Australia, for those companies online who export, it is also replicated in our export markets. So markets that Australian packaged food products are being sent to are also demanding higher platforms around health and nutrition.
Yeah.
I think the other, if I can, David, the other megatrend to note here, which will lead in neatly to, I think, the next section. Anyone would have thought we planned this, but these are just the way the megatrends worked. Is those two megatrends at number 3 and number 4, circular economy and climate change, really fitting into that sustainability bucket, and they have absolutely escalated in importance over the next the next few years. And then finally, before we do start doing a bit of a deeper dive into that sustainability piece, I will just highlight food security at number 5 there. If we had have carried out this survey pre-COVID, food security would not be would probably have been at number 28 on the list. But given what we've seen with the complete upswing in demand, purchasing products through supermarket channels and others, we have seen an increase in food security importance. And I think that the sovereign capability that I mentioned earlier, particularly with governments, will be a focus for us in the next few years. So just worth noting food security, but the circular economy and climate change.
Oh, I don't know. I can't hear you, Sam. Maybe others can. I caught you right up until the end. And I was just about to say that's a phenomenal leap in terms of where food security sits. And yes, you're absolutely right. I think we might be touching on sustainability in a moment. One thing I did want to do, which I didn't have a chance to earlier, given some of the challenges we've had, is share with you a handout. Now, I'm just going to press the button now and you'll have it available. This is a summary of the AFGC's industry challenges, something you can download now, take it back into your business. And I guess if Sam were here, she'd probably say use it to help sanity check against your strategy and ensure that you're covering off and thinking about the things that feature on that one pager. So I'll leave you that one for a moment. And now we're going to head on to our second theme, sustainability, Simon. It's, again, it's something that we need to do something about now, and it's probably not going to go away, right?
Yeah, I certainly it isn't. I think sustainability, again, it's been around a while, right? We talk about environment and corporate social responsibility and things like that. I think it's been thought of in this region as a nice to have, or perhaps it's one of those things people say they want, but actually when it's provided, they don't actually buy it. to which I always ask, well, are you sure it was executed properly? Because just because something doesn't work doesn't mean the insight or the strategy was wrong. But that's for another day. I think the point here is it's not a nice to have anymore. It's absolutely fundamental and a must have in your business. And I wanted to take a real step back, and to demonstrate this, I want to take a big step back and talk about the US market. So David, if you, here we go.
Comes all in one.
Yeah, exactly. A slide to demonstrate what I'm talking about. So a couple of things here. First of all, just to recognize that the US is a few years ahead of us as a market in terms of investing in sustainability. Aldi's recognized as #1 retailer in the US, principally through the packaging commitments they've made. But I wanted to call out Kroger as well, who have coordinated with 100 suppliers across 100 different categories, sustainable and reusable packaging unique to that category that shoppers bring in. So there's just some examples that the retailers are doing. But the real point here is this. There is massive commercial gain to be had by launching successful sustainable products. So in the US, market share of sustainable products is now at 16%. It's growing 7 times traditional non-sustainable lines. 55% of all new product growth is sustainable products. And here's the kicker. If you want to drive margin, if you want to drive price premium, there's an average 39% price premium on sustainable products in the US. Now, let me be clear. From our data, shoppers are very clear with us in saying, and we'll see this a bit later, if I buy sustainable, I'm willing to pay price premium. Okay, so we are seeing parallels with this market in terms of white space opportunity. The reality is we're not quite where the US is yet. We are starting to see it. We're starting to see Coles, for example, in their Mooney Pond store with Omo and reusable packaging. IGA actually rank #1 out of all retailers on our results at macro level in terms of sustainability and satisfaction of Australian shoppers with sustainability, partly with their community work and local sort, or the fact that they are a local company, local sourcing, as well as their community work, partly because of their packaging pledges as well. So we are starting to get there, but if we look at our progress as an industry, as a country, in terms of satisfaction with sustainability, we can just click onto the next slide, David, please. Then we can see Australia is doing okay. There's a 5% increase in satisfaction, but in context of other countries, you can see we're quite a long way behind the acceleration that we've seen in Europe and that we've seen in the US in the last 2 years. So this is not an excuse for COVID. Other countries are accelerating faster on sustainability than we are. So there's the challenge. We need to do it. It's not just something shoppers are saying, I'd like it. It's something they are saying, I seriously want it. I'm willing to pay more for it. I'm looking for it. Now, the next question is, okay, how do we target those people? Who do we talk to, and what categories should we focus on? So broadly speaking, again, this depends by category, but at a macro level, who is it we need to talk to? Well, we need to talk to, or the type of shopper most interested in sustainable solutions or products are younger females with young kids and family. If you talk to them either pre-store or in-store with marketing material, then you'll get great return on the investment. You'll get better bang for buck on that investment compared to other products. So in other words, invest, shout about it. This was the point I was making before. They're willing to pay a price premium. They're willing to pay more if they find that solution credible. It's got to be, the efficacy has to be there, but it has to be a credible, sustainable product as well. And then the final point there, promotions drive volume and are expandable. So it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be deep, but promotions and price can trigger the response to try and switch into those brands. And finally, again, it depends on category, but what sort of occasions are shoppers looking for it for, where it tends to be more around social gatherings and gifts. In other words, I want to impress people. And so where does your category and where does your brand sit in that? Again, just the last point here, just playing off the category point, what are the big categories that rank highest from an expectation of sustainability. These are the top 10 categories where shoppers are saying it's most important to me. Now, side note, look at baby in that list, and guess where that came from? Yes, it was the men buying baby products. It didn't used to be in that list. This is an example about how one category or department has really fired up the rankings on our survey because of the changes in demographic. But outside of baby, breakfast solutions again are in there, health and beauty, and so on. Where does your category sit? That's the big takeaway. Understand where your category sits. Is it important in terms of delivering sustainability? What does that mean for your shopper profile and demographic, your occasion, your mission, how you talk to people through your packaging or at shelf?
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Simon. Now we are doing okay for time. We had obviously a few hold-ups early on, but we're doing okay. There's a lot of questions coming in, some of which, guys, I'm going to touch on in a moment when we get into a bit more of a consolidated kind of discussion phase. A few on sustainability. What does it mean? What's included? The other thing I want to do now is share another handout with you. It's based on this notion of a sustainable shopper and a sustainability shopper profile. Now, this is a really useful thing to be able to do, is when you take a massive data set and you dissect it and you look at a specific demographic, a specific archetype in this case, and you understand then the behaviors, the profiling, the triggers and so forth for that particular shopper. Now, again, what I've shared with you is the full sustainability shopper profile. That's for all categories across Coles and Woolies. But the interesting thing then, of course, and a question you might have is, how does that play out in my category? And to someone's point, well, so one of the questions, I think it was for you, Matthew, was what are the examples of categories that are doing this well? What does it look like when they do it well in store? So for that, you want to start looking at the categories where shoppers are telling us and telling you that sustainability is being delivered well, and then we look at some of the other factors that are coming to bear and coming to shelf in those categories, like premium, like range, like quality, and so forth. So you build up a picture that way, excuse me, of what's working and what can be done better. Now then, that leaves us, folks, with our third theme for today, and we're going to wrap up by talking about innovation, but again, before we just do that, I wanted to throw out this opportunity for you. Some of you will have noticed Nancy Truscott from the Shopper Intelligence team in the chat. Say hi, Nancy. And she's been talking about some follow-up sessions. Opportunity here for you. If you want to discover what the 3 big changes are in your category, then we would love to share that with you. All you have to do when we share the link with you after this session is book an appointment. Book in a few minutes with one of the experts from the team, Shopper Intelligence, and we will go through the 3 big changes that are relevant to your category. It could be sustainability, it could be something about health, it could be something about innovation that we're going to talk about right now. There's no strings attached, there's no obligations to any of it. It's just a chance for us to share some more value with you. That's it. Easiest thing possible is just to book that in with us, and away you go. And without me even touching anything, Simon, clearly my machine knows that we're running short of time. So here's another slide for you. And I guess we're closing with a little bit of a warning sign as well.
Oh, we are. It's really hurrying us along.
It's really getting going. I know what's going on now.
Yeah, look, listen, innovation. For me, it's the vehicle for this. Sam talked about doubling the size of the industry. We talked about the changes that are happening. Shoppers are changing, their needs, their expectations are changing. Well, the vehicle to deliver that is innovation. It could be, big NPD, true innovation, if you like. It could be just reframing how you talk, how you communicate, how you position your categories, your brands, through packaging or segmentation at shelf, the way it's delivered on shelf, occasion-led messaging, that sort of thing. Whatever it is, it's important. And what this trend shows, this is a question where we say, did you see anything new and different? And if you did, were you encouraged to buy more because of it? And as you can see from the slide, there's no real, it's stagnant at best. Some of the retailers there falling away, particularly Woolworths in the last few months or last year. Australia at 20% at an overall level. Other markets doing it better. UK at 30%, US at 43%. Shoppers over there are saying, yes, I am buying more. It is encouraging me to incrementally buy more volume. It's not about doing innovation, it's about cutting through and driving commercial gain through innovation. And there's a challenge, I would say, for the industry reflected in these figures.
Can I add into this one, if I could, Simon?
Yeah, please.
So I think, what's interesting in this data set is where I started at the beginning of the conversation, in the innovation and R&D is the lifeblood of our sector and always has been. But we need to get the settings right in the first place to enable innovation and R&D to flourish throughout the sector. We need to work on profitability, and until we can work on that, we then need to be able to drive our spend on CapEx and R&D. So some sobering facts that I thought, I don't want to be too depressing, but I think are worth noting, is that the weak profitability across the sector has really impacted R&D. So spend in R&D has been in decline since 2013-14, and we're currently spending the same amount on R&D as we did in 2009-10, and that's 440 million per annum, and that has flatlined. In addition to that, our capital expenditure is the same as it has been for the last 5 years, so that is also flatlined at about 3 billion per annum. So getting the settings right for innovation from a business perspective are really important, but also to the point that Simon's been making, meeting the expectations of the shopper will hopefully ensure that you're able to drive some more profitable growth and get those factors corrected in that cycle that we have at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Some great points. I will loop back on some of those as we get into our conversation, because I think there's an interesting conversation there to be had about the R&D flatline versus the what we're seeing here. Simon, just come back to you now, because the critical thing that we always move to here is, okay, there is a challenge. What you want to do is try and find some white space, right? You want to find an opportunity where if you make that investment, you stand the best chance of a return.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why this year we've decided, okay, well, let's have a look at this and put a framework together around not just what shoppers would like in terms of, to your point, David, white space opportunity. Where is it they are looking for innovation, where they most likely to seek it out and be willing to try it, but also what are the barriers from a behavioural point of view? What are the categories that are relatively low on grab and go? In other words, people browsing, people willing to, find out what's going on at fixture and spend a bit of time at shelf looking at that. What are the categories that are less fixated in the brand that I almost always have, less autopilot in terms of how people shop them? So if you look at this high interest and low barriers type of framework, then what that gives us is a nice matrix. We love matrices. And in the bottom right of that are the categories where it's easiest to innovate, in the sense that that's where people are looking for it and it's where the barriers are least. So in a moment, I hope, here we go, the chart will come up, here we go, and you can see the types of categories that are in there. Snacking and bakery are the big departments that sit in there, but I've also added some other categories just to give you a flavour of what's in there. Of course, lots of categories, lots of positions. I think the other thing to say on this is you can innovate anywhere. You can always have a piece of genuine innovation that is successful regardless of the quadrant. What we're doing here is saying, where is it easiest and where are the low-hanging fruit, if you like. So again, the takeout is understand what's happening in innovation in your category, because there are plenty of good examples in Australia. It's not that we're not doing it, it's just at a macro level, it's static. Where does your category sit? What are the priorities for innovation? Who, how, and where, and why do we focus on it? And let's build a story to prove that innovation is right in your category, and here's how we're going to do it, and here's how we're going to partner with the retailer, because it's in their interest as much as yours to do it.
Yes, yes, indeed. Okay, thank you, Simon, for bringing our 3 lessons home today. Don't forget, again, I mentioned this, if you want to find out and discover what the 3 big changes are in your category, and again, I see a lot of specifics being asked and called out, which is great in the chat, and Nancy's doing her best to respond to those. This is your opportunity. We'll tell you specifically how your category relates to these macro themes. We'll tell you if there's a correlation, if there's an over-index, an under-index, or if indeed there are actually other strands, other themes that you should be taking into consideration above some of these as well, because this is a total industry view. So we'll send you a link after this session, and all you have to do is book in a slot, and one of the team will gladly have a chat with you and take you through those dynamics. Right, we are, what are we, 2:20? We've got about another 5 minutes or so, guys. So there are some questions that came through that I thought was worth us touching back on. Simon, I was going to start with you first of all. It's a relatively straightforward one. When you talked about the price quality dynamic and the 2x2 that you had there, which shows Australia accelerating on quality. Yeah. The question was, what does price mean in that context? Then what is the notion of price that we're asking about?
Yeah, look, it's a good question because there are lots of different facets to price. That particular slide was price overall. So it's the actual question is, how important is it that I get good prices in category X in retailer Y? So the way we interview is one specific category in one retailer. So how important is it that I'm getting great prices in bread in Woolworths, as an example? And that across all categories, all retailers, that importance metric has not significantly changed compared to 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And something I noticed anyway, looking at that chart, was, and we didn't touch on it in this series so much, is where New Zealand sits, up on quality and price. So quite the challenge if you are one of the people on the line who's calling us from New Zealand. Maybe we'll talk about that another day. While we're on the subject of those measures, another question then was about the sustainability. How do we come up with that sustainability profile? What are the measures that go into that, Simon?
Yeah, look, again, it's one of the factors that we ask about how important is this to you. There's a statement behind the sustainability factor, which I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's around things like environmental impact, corporate social responsibility. I know when we dive into it, I think there was a question before about, what are the components of it? Mm-hmm. Another question around things like packaging tends to lead that, but it doesn't always have to be like that. Certainly around a lot of the fresh categories, it's about sourcing and production and authentic supply chains. And I've forgotten the question. What was the question, David?
What goes into it? No, you've answered it.
I have answered it. There you go.
And that was the follow-up question as well. Is it things like packaging and so on and so forth? And these are certainly areas that if we go into individual categories, we're starting to see a lot more granularity on those sorts of statements in that as well. Like we are in liquor, for example, where we start to break down what does health mean? Is it lower sugar? Is it low alcohol? Is it low carb? So obviously reflecting the fact these are big mega trends, dare I say it. That's the way our program is starting to go, where we're going to break down these big themes and really give you the granularity to be able to make the important decisions that you need to. Sam, from a health perspective, then just touching back on this, I know that was obviously your second biggest mega theme, mega trend. We've talked about it today. It's going to vary category by category, but I wondered from your perspective at AFGC, what do you see as being the challenges around achieving that? And you talked a little bit about advocacy groups and some of the direction that they're pushing in. What are your thoughts on the challenges for us as a group and people on the call?
Yeah, it's a really interesting space, isn't it? So on one hand, we'll have health advocacy groups who really want to limit choice to consumers by removing products that they deem to be unhealthy. And then we've got the other end of the spectrum, which says that it should be personal responsibility in terms of your purchasing patterns. And then we've got the government weighing into this, looking at how can we deliver a healthier offer whilst not reducing choice to the consumer. And anyone who has been in the process of reformulating products will know how difficult it is to reformulate a product to meet the same requirements that they may have had previously under a health spectrum. Although we're seeing more and more of that happening as people try to drive healthier outcomes for their products. So we do have those spectrums of, organisations wanting to ban certain foods, all the way through to personal choice, and then trying to deliver products that are going to meet those health requirements. And of course, we're going to see this area expand even more as we get into novel foods or certain aspects of a food and the claims that can be made against those. So it's going to be a really interesting area in the next kind of 12 to 24 months.
It is. Look, there's no doubt about it. It doesn't go away. And Simon, I think just to bring you back in on this, we end up talking a lot about the notions of influence and impact and collaboration between suppliers and retailers. And it's probably not unreasonable to say, look, I get the health agenda, I get that, I get the sustainability, I get the innovation. Often I still end up having the conversation around price. And we talk to this a lot, and this is the foundation of what Shopper Intelligence does, is to provide the tools to be able to evolve that conversation. But what's your silver bullet for today on that?
Well, is there ever a silver bullet? I think that my answer is have objective data to take to the retailer to help what is often a junior buyer to take to a senior buyer, to convince them that actually pricing this category is not the number one thing you need to focus on. We've got some great case studies on that are publicly available. Whether it's sustainability or health, I think the case study that springs to mind is around shelf simplicity, and using our data to prove that from a shopper perspective, price is important, it's a hygiene factor, but the differentiator is over here, and that's what we need to go for in terms of volumes, margins, everything we're talking about.
Yeah, and I'd add to that, use the retailer's own strategies to assist you in this process.
100%.
So if they've got a platform around sustainability, you need to work out how you can hook that in to what you're going to deliver.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Someone has just mentioned, is the drop in cut through of innovation impacted by the move online? You would be very surprised. We don't have time to go into that in a lot of detail, but Ilana and others who may think that, you'd be very surprised how differently behaviours can be at category level between a bricks and mortar shop and an online shop. So it may definitely not necessarily be the case, but again, it all depends on the dynamics when you break it down at that level between bricks and clicks in your category.
And of course, we'll be looking at that in the third webinar.
Absolutely, we will. That is session number 3. So our checklist, guys, change is now. Remember this term, trusted quality, bake that into what you're doing. Think sustainability, it's a must-have, but it's also an opportunity and a vehicle for growth. And then in terms of innovation, there is a warning out there from shoppers. It is waning in terms of its impact in Australia. And now's the time to target precisely, but not necessarily with more. More isn't necessarily what is needed in your category. Call to action, folks. This is what you can do. Discover what the 3 big themes are. Find out what the 3 big changes in your category are. We'll send you a link after this session. All you have to do, pick a time that works for you, and you will get a call from one of our Shopper Intelligence shopper experts. Easy, no obligations. Just have a chat and an opportunity for you to learn a little bit more about your category. All that remains for me to say is thank you very much for sticking with us. Thank you to Sam. Thank you to Simon. Appreciate all your input and your thoughts. Don't forget, the next session is on 4th of November. That's the one we'll be talking about occasions and the occasion mindset. And then the one after that is all about e-com and e-com shopper behaviours. Don't miss it. Have a great day. Thanks again. Take care. Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.